Hi, welcome back to our Expo 2. We watch now the last piece of the Diary of a CEO with Dr. K. I hope you have
Two things
fun.
cancel
Bye
out.
bye.
That's not how it works. So if I give you a glass of water and then I piss in it and then I add sugar, it doesn't remove the piss. These are both independent things. This is what tends to happen. This is what we don't understand about trauma. Removing the piss requires removing the piss. No amount of sugar will take it out of the drink. Okay? So this is mistake number one. No amount of building something good will remove something bad. Okay? So healing, and it's also like, if I break a leg, no amount of bench press will heal my leg. Like I can build as much as I want to, I can fix my hair, I can brush my teeth, but the leg is broken, the leg is broken. Same is true of the mind. Okay? Second thing is what happens is we have our consciousness is divided. Now we're gonna get kind of technical and off the rails. So we have all of these dormant pieces of our consciousness that activate in certain situations. And all you have to do is pay attention to yourself in a 5-minute period and you'll see this. So when I walk into a bathroom that I've never used before, then I start thinking about, okay, where's the flush? Where's the toilet? How do I use this toilet? So I'll activate dormant information all the time. So if someone asks me what's, the quadratic equation, that information is there and dormant in my mind and it gets activated. So one of the biggest mistakes we make about healing is we look at what is active in our mind 90% of the time and we assume that the injury is no longer there. That's not the case. Does that make sense?
100%.
Right? So the injury just goes dormant. Then there are certain things that happen that can trigger that injury. That's what we call triggers, right? So if I'm traumatized, if we look at PTSD and I've been traumatized by, a bomb going off, literally my brain has certain circuits that scans my perceptual environment and decides what to activate. So there are ways stillness makes you feel small. And fuck you if you're ever gonna be small again. Never again, never again, never again. I would bet money that if you sit by yourself and you're not occupied, right? That's why you have to watch crime shows. Because if you don't watch crime shows, you're gonna be still. And if you're still, that's unacceptable. Okay? So dormant things have to be healed where they belong. You don't need to worry, by the way. It's in your karma. It's gonna get healed and it's coming.
Yeah, I was laughing because it's so true.
Yeah.
Just laughing at the fact that when I go to Bali, that's where I end up writing a book. And I'm like,
Right. And people would kill for that, right? So many people out there are like, oh man, I would love to be you. No, you guys don't want to be Steven. I know you think you do, but this is the crazy thing. We each as human beings have our own journey. And are you privileged and should you be grateful and should people aspire to be you? Absolutely, but they don't want to be you. Your own problems are enough. They don't need yours too.
yeah,
Okay?
amen.
So now the question is, how do we heal? So I think the problem is no amount of fixing things over there is going to go back to this. And this is where we can look at the science of healing trauma. So here are the steps. First thing is safety, so that we can get neuroplasticity. Second thing is emotional awareness and emotional regulation. And this allows us for number 3, which is really important, which is identity. So if we look at our human sense of identity, how do you develop an identity? So if I were to ask you in 3 sentences, Steven, who are you?
My identity.
Yeah, tell me, who's Steven?
To myself or just to the world, or is that the same
Tell
thing?
me about who's Steven.
I'm an entrepreneur. I guess I'm a podcaster now. And I am, I was going to say a Manchester United fan.
Okay, so I think those are 3 features, right? So
Yeah.
I've read your bio. So the other thing that you tend to do in your bio is there's a narrative, right? You were a college dropout.
Yeah.
You started a company, right? You talked about this Louis Vuitton bag phase, and then there's the post-Louis Vuitton bag phase.
Yeah.
And even before we had this podcast, you were talking to me about the phases of your life.
Yeah.
So identity requires a timeline.
Okay.
Now, the interesting thing is if we look at the formative moments of your life, they all have emotion. So this is what's really important. If you have an identity that is bad in any way, you can never change that identity without emotions. So what happens, so when I tell my story, it's like I was a kid, 9 years old, I got put on these expectations, dropped out of college, went to become a monk, went to medical school, became a doctor. Now I started this whole helping random people on the internet thing. So each of those were emotional experiences. So who we are is a narrative of our most emotional experiences. And we see this in all of our like superhero movies, right? Batman had this tragic experience where his parents were shot by the Joker, and then he became something, right? There are all these moments, these powerful emotional moments. So if your emotions are dulled by drugs, by technology, by pornography, by watching serial killer shows, you will never change who you are. It is impossible. The neuroscience of your identity and development requires emotional experience. Okay? So with trauma, that's the next thing that happens. Once we have access to emotions, then we can become someone else. Now, the problem with trauma is that before we become someone else, the beliefs we have about ourselves become our destiny. So if I think to myself, I'm a loser. So when I was interviewing for residency, I went to an interview somewhere on the West Coast. And the director of the program called me in at the end of the interview, and they're like, we don't understand why you're here. And I was like, what do you mean you don't understand why I'm here? And they're like, your application is really good. You could end up at any program in the country. Like, why did you pick us? And like, I was like, I picked y'all because I liked the way that your hospital works, and I like that the city it's in, and I'm super into complementary. Like, what do you mean, why am I here? Right? But the way that he approached it with a lack of confidence, he's like, our program sucks, and they had some problems at the program at the time, so it kind of makes sense. But this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I go into a job interview and I feel a lack of confidence, if I believe I'm a loser, then I'm not gonna get the job. You used to go to clubs and buy bottles of champagnes and thought that you were a loser, didn't end up where you wanted to go. So this is what a lot of people don't understand. Everyone's focused on productivity. But the single most important thing that will determine your future is your sense of who you are. And that's not like some, spiritual, get connected with you. This is like fucking science, right? If you believe you are a loser, the empathic circuits of other people's brains will detect that in you, and they will treat you like a loser. You carry who you are with you. That's why you get into failed relationship number 1, failed relationship number 2, failed relationship number 3, until you changed. And when you change, your sense of identity changes, then your future will change. The last thing to do is, on a more microscopic level, look at these responses within yourself. So you asked me at the very beginning of the podcast, and now we're coming full circle. How do you start understanding yourself? So you look at the drives within yourself, right? Why can't I sit still? And this is gonna be so hard for you, because if I told you, this is hilarious. If I told you, Stephen, if you want to heal your trauma, you need to go to Bali, you need to sit on a beach, and you need to do nothing. You will still turn that into growth and progress. Because what you'll say is, oh, this is what Dr. K told me to heal my trauma, so now I'm doing even more important work than a podcast for 10 million people on the internet. Now I'm doing the healing of my trauma, which is the goal, and you're still running away from yourself. There's no way you can run away from it. Your mind will transform the very thing that you do into the problem. And that's what trauma does. I'll give you a chance to respond, because I've been doing it.
I'm waiting for the solution, Dr. K.
Yeah, so I mean, in your case, I think it's like sit. Just sit. And you have to be careful, because if your mind turns the sitting into a goal that I have to achieve, I need to sit and that will be my growth. No fucking goal. Just sit. Waste your time. What you need to learn how to do is waste your time. Do nothing. Sit. Be with yourself. And watch out for that mind. The second thing is awareness, okay? So as you sit, you will notice all of these things come up. So this is like, you asked me a question at the beginning, how do you start? So what I would say is sit for 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Sometimes we'll tell people to stare at a wall for an hour. And just look at what on earth goes on inside you. You will discover that it is a zoo of thoughts, feelings, emotions, drives, panics, worries, distractions. Your internal environment is such a mess. So what we need to do is just kind of calm that stuff down by like just letting it kind of run out.
I hope you guys like the stuff I post, everything I think is interesting and stuff I post, and I hope you like it. Subscribe and comment, and goodbye.